The barn door swung open with a violent creak that pierced the stillness of dawn, and Brady Ashford found himself staring down the barrel of his own hunting rifle, held by trembling hands attached to the most beautiful woman he had ever seen, even if her face was streaked with dirt and tears. "Please," she whispered, her voice cracking like dry timber. "Please do not make me leave." Brady raised his hand slowly, his heart hammering against his ribs. The woman before him wore a torn dress that might have once been fine blue cotton, now reduced to rags that barely protected her from the Colorado cold. Her dark hair hung in tangled waves around her shoulders, and her green eyes were wild with fear and desperation. Blood stained the fabric near her shoulder, and she swayed on her feet as though she might collapse at any moment. "Easy now," Brady said, keeping his voice low and steady, the same tone he used with spooked horses. "I am not going to hurt you. You can put that rifle down." The woman's grip tightened on the weapon instead. "You will turn me in. You will send me back to him." "I do not know who him is, miss, but I am not sending you anywhere." Brady took a careful step forward. "You are hurt. Let me help you." The rifle wavered as the woman's strength seemed to fail her. Brady moved quickly, catching both her and the weapon as her knees buckled. She was lighter than he expected, all bones and desperation, and as he lifted her into his arms, she finally gave in to whatever had been driving her forward. Her head fell against his chest, and she went limp with exhaustion. Brady carried her across the yard toward his small ranch house, his mind racing. He had lived alone on this property 3 miles outside of Westcliff, Colorado, for the past 5 years, ever since he had scraped together enough money from cattle drives to buy the land. At 28 years old, he had grown accustomed to solitude, to the quiet rhythm of working his small herd and maintaining his property. The town folks mostly left him alone, which suited him fine after the war had left him with too many memories he preferred to forget. But now this woman had arrived like a storm, disrupting everything. Inside the house, Brady laid her on his bed, the only real piece of furniture he owned besides a rough-hewn table and 2 chairs. He lit the oil lamp and got his first good look at her in the growing light. She was young, maybe 22 or 23, with fine features that spoke of a gentler upbringing than the frontier usually afforded. The blood on her dress came from a deep gash on her upper arm, and her feet were wrapped in strips of cloth that had once been part of her petticoat, now bloody and torn from walking. Brady heated water on his stove and gathered what medical supplies he had. When he returned to the bedside, the woman's eyes had opened again, watching him with a mixture of fear and calculation. "What is your name?" he asked gently, wringing out a cloth in the warm water. She hesitated, her jaw working as though testing different answers. Finally, she whispered, Abigail Lawrence." "Well, Miss Lawrence, I am Brady Ashford, and this is my home. You are safe here, I promise you that, but I need to tend to your wounds. Will you let me do that?" Abigail studied his face for a long moment, then gave a small nod. As Brady carefully cleaned the gash on her arm, she hissed in pain but did not pull away. The wound was deep but clean, likely from a sharp edge rather than a weapon. He worked methodically, the way his mother had taught him before fever had taken her when he was 15. "How long were you in my barn?" Brady asked, trying to distract her from the pain as he began to stitch the wound closed with practiced hands. 2 days, Abigail admitted. "I did not know if you would come back. I hoped you would not. I was in town, selling cattle. If I had known you were there, suffering, I would have come back sooner." He tied off the final stitch and reached for a clean bandage. "Where did you come from?" Abigail's eyes filled with tears again. "Denver. I walked most of the way." Brady's hand stilled. "Denver was over 100 miles north. You walked from Denver, In this condition, I had no choice. Her voice broke, and she turned her face away. I had to get away from him, from what he was going to make me do. Brady finished wrapping her arm and then moved to examine her feet. They were in worse shape than he had feared, blistered and bloody, with what looked like the beginnings of infection in several places. He worked in silence for a while, cleaning and bandaging, his mind churning with questions he was not sure he had the right to ask. Finally, Abigail spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you. You did not have to help me." "Yes, I did." Brady looked up and met her eyes. "No one deserves to suffer like this, Miss Lawrence. Whatever you are running from, whatever happened to you, you are safe now. I give you my word on that. I do not even know you. No, but I know what it is like to need somewhere safe to land." Brady stood and covered her with his quilt. "You need rest. I will make you something to eat when you wake. Wait." Abigail's hand shot out and grabbed his wrist with surprising strength. "He will look for me. Samuel Hackett. He is a wealthy man in Denver, and I was supposed to marry him. But he is a monster. He hurt his first wife so badly that she lost her mind, and everyone just pretended not to see it. When I tried to refuse the marriage, my father locked me in my room, so I climbed out the window and ran." Brady felt anger kindling in his chest, hot and fierce. "Your father agreed to marry you to a man like that. My father has debts, gambling debts. Samuel offered to clear them in exchange for my hand." Abigail's laugh was bitter. "I am worth the price of my father's mistakes, nothing more." "That is not true." Brady sat down on the edge of the bed, still holding her gaze. "You are worth far more than that, Miss Lawrence. And this Samuel Hackett will not find you here. Even if he comes looking, I will not let him take you. You cannot stop him. He has money and influence. He could have the law on his side. Maybe in Denver, but here in Westcliff, money does not carry as much weight as a person's character. And besides, the law cannot touch what it cannot find." Brady stood and moved toward the door. "Get some rest. We can talk more when you are stronger." As he reached the threshold, Abigail called out one more time, "Why are you doing this? Why are you helping me?" Brady paused, considering his answer. The truth was complicated, tangled up with his own past and the things he had seen during the war. He had watched too many people turn away from suffering, pretending not to see because it was easier than getting involved. He had promised himself he would never be that kind of man. "Because it is the right thing to do," he said simply. "And because everyone deserves a chance to be free." Over the following days, Brady watched Abigail slowly come back to life. That first day, she slept for nearly 20 hours straight, waking only to eat the simple stew he prepared, and to use the chamber pot before collapsing back into exhausted sleep. Brady spent the time doing his usual chores, feeding his cattle, mending fence line, and trying not to think too hard about what he had gotten himself into. On the second day, Abigail was awake for longer periods. She sat at his table wrapped in one of his blankets, sipping coffee and watching him move around the small house with curious eyes. Brady felt self-conscious under her gaze, suddenly aware of how sparse and rough his home must seem to someone who had grown up in Denver society. "You live here alone?" she asked. "Yes, for 5 years now. No wife, no family. My parents are both gone. My father died in a mining accident when I was 12 and my mother from fever 3 years later. I have a sister, but she married a merchant in St. Louis and moved there 8 years ago." Brady poured himself more coffee and sat down across from her. "What about you? Besides your father, do you have other family?" Abigail shook her head. "My mother died giving birth to my younger brother when I was 10. The baby died too. After that, it was just my father and me. He used to be a good man, or I thought he was, but the gambling changed him. It consumed him until there was nothing left but his debts and his desperation to clear them. "I am sorry. That must have been hard. I thought I could help him. I took in sewing, tried to earn what I could. But it was never enough. The debts kept growing, and then Samuel made his offer." Abigail's hands tightened around her coffee cup. "I met Samuel at a church social. He seemed charming at first, attentive and generous. But then I heard the stories about his first wife, Elizabeth. How she had been vibrant and full of life before the marriage, and afterward she barely spoke, barely left the house. She died 2 years into the marriage, and the doctor said it was her heart, but everyone whispered that it was really her spirit that gave out." Brady felt his jaw tighten. "And your father still agreed to the marriage. He did not care. Or maybe he convinced himself that the stories were just gossip. Either way, he saw a solution to his problems and he took it." Abigail met Brady's eyes, and he saw the steel beneath her fear. "But I would rather die than become Samuel's wife, so I ran. You were brave to do that. I was terrified. I am still terrified, but yes, I suppose I was brave too." She smiled for the first time, just a flicker, but it transformed her face. "And then I found your barn. How did you choose this place? Westcliff is not exactly on the main road." "I did not choose it, not really. I just kept walking, avoiding the main roads, sleeping in barns and abandoned buildings when I could find them. I was trying to get far enough away that Samuel would never think to look for me. When I saw your property, it looked isolated enough to be safe. I thought I would rest for a night and then move on, but I was too weak. And then you came back." Brady nodded slowly. "Well, I am glad you stayed. You are in no condition to be wandering the countryside. I cannot stay here forever, though. I need to figure out what to do next." "We will figure it out together," Brady said, surprising himself with the words. "But first, you need to heal. Everything else can wait." As the days passed into a week, Brady found himself looking forward to Abigail's company in ways that surprised him. His solitary life had suited him well enough, but having her in his home brought a warmth and vitality that he had not realized he was missing. She insisted on helping despite her injuries, mending his worn shirts and cooking meals that were far better than anything he had managed on his own. They fell into an easy rhythm, working side by side during the day and talking long into the evenings. Abigail told him stories about growing up in Denver, about the books she loved to read, and the music she played on the piano before her father sold it to pay his debts. Brady found himself sharing things he rarely spoke about, his memories of the war, the friends he had lost, and the reasons he had chosen this isolated life on the Colorado frontier. "You ever get lonely?" Abigail asked one evening as they sat on his small porch, watching the sun set over the mountains. "Sometimes," Brady admitted. "But loneliness seemed safer than the alternative. During the war, I saw what happened when you let yourself care too much about people. You lose them and it tears you apart. Out here alone, I figured I could not lose what I never had. That is a sad way to live. Maybe, but it kept me safe." He glanced at her, taking in the way the fading light painted her features with gold. "Or it did until you showed up in my barn." Abigail laughed softly. "I am sorry for disrupting your safe, lonely life. I am not." The words came out more intense than Brady had intended, and he saw surprise flicker across Abigail's face. "I mean, I am glad you found my barn. I am glad I could help you. So am I." Abigail reached out and placed her hand over his, a simple gesture that sent warmth flooding through Brady's chest. "You saved my life, Brady. I will never forget that." They sat in comfortable silence as darkness fell, neither of them moving to break the contact between their hands. Brady felt something shifting inside him, old walls beginning to crack and crumble. He had thought he wanted to be alone, but now he could not imagine going back to the empty silence that had filled his house before Abigail arrived. 2 weeks after finding Abigail in his barn, Brady rode into Westcliff to pick up supplies. The town was small, just a main street with a general store, a saloon, a church, and a handful of other buildings. Brady knew most of the residents by sight, and they knew him as the quiet cattleman who kept to himself, but always paid his bills on time. As he loaded flour and coffee into his saddlebags, the storekeeper, an older man named George Williams, leaned across the counter with the gleam of gossip in his eyes. "Hey, Brady, you heard about that fellow who came through yesterday?" Well-dressed man from Denver asking questions about a missing woman. Brady's blood rang cold, but he kept his expression neutral. "That's so." "Yep. Said she was his fiancée, ran away from the wedding, had a description and everything. Dark hair, green eyes, about 22 years old. Said her name was Abigail Lawrence." "Did anyone tell him anything?" Brady asked carefully. George shrugged. Most folks had not seen anyone matching that description. Fellow seemed pretty determined, though. Said there would be a reward for information leading to her return. $50. $50 was a fortune on the frontier, enough to tempt even honest people. Brady felt his protective instincts surge. "If he comes back, you can tell him I have not seen anyone like that." "Sure thing, Brady." George gave him a curious look. "Though it is strange, is it not? A woman running away from a rich man who wants to marry her. Most women would consider that good fortune." "Maybe she had her reasons," Brady said shortly, gathering his supplies. "Not every man with money is worth marrying." He rode back to his ranch faster than necessary, his mind churning. Samuel Hackett was already looking for Abigail, already close enough to have reached Westcliff. The town was small, and strangers were noticed. It would only be a matter of time before someone saw Abigail or word reached Hackett that Brady lived alone and might have taken in a visitor. When he arrived home, Abigail was hanging laundry on the line he had strung up for her, humming softly to herself. She looked healthier now, the color returned to her cheeks, her movements no longer stiff with pain. She smiled when she saw him, and Brady felt his heart constrict with fear for what might happen if Hackett found her. "You are back early," she said, walking over to help him with the supplies. "Is everything all right?" Brady glanced around, making sure they were alone, then said quietly, "We need to talk. Inside." Abigail's smile faded and fear crept back into her eyes. "He is here, is he not? Samuel found me. He was in Westcliff yesterday asking questions. No one told him anything, but he is offering a reward, $50 for information about you." Brady followed her inside and closed the door. "It is only a matter of time before he comes out here, or before someone sees you and connects the pieces." Abigail sank into a chair, her face pale. "I should leave. I should go now before he finds me here. I have put you in danger by staying." "You are not going anywhere." Brady knelt in front of her chair, taking her hands in his. "But I have an idea if you are willing to trust me." "Of course I trust you. You have done nothing but help me since the moment we met." Brady took a deep breath, aware that what he was about to propose would change everything. "Marry me. If you are my wife, he cannot touch you. He has no legal claim on you, and even his money and influence will not override a marriage contract." Abigail stared at him, her mouth opening and closing without sound. Finally, she managed, "You cannot be serious. You barely know me." "I know enough. I know you are brave and kind and strong. I know you would rather risk death than live in a cage. I know that I care about you more than I have cared about anyone in a very long time." Brady squeezed her hands gently. "This does not have to be a real marriage, not in the ways that matter. I am offering you my name and my protection. The rest we can figure out as we go." "Brady, that is too much. I cannot ask you to sacrifice your freedom for me." "You are not asking, I am offering." He held her gaze steadily. And honestly, Abigail, I do not think it would be a sacrifice. These past 2 weeks with you here, I have been happier than I have been in years. If you marry me, you can stay. You can be safe. And maybe in time we can build something real together. Tears spilled down Abigail's cheeks, but she was smiling through them. You really mean that? You would marry me just to keep me safe, not just to keep you safe, although that would be reason enough. Brady reached up and gently wiped away her tears with his thumb. I am not good with words, Abigail, but what I am trying to say is that I want you to stay. Not out of obligation or necessity, but because I cannot imagine going back to the way things were before you arrived. You have woken something in me that I thought the war had killed, and I do not want to let that go. Abigail was quiet for a long moment, searching his face. Then she nodded slowly. All right. Yes. I will marry you, Brady Ashford, and not just because I need protection, though I do, but because you are the first person in a very long time who has made me feel like I matter, like I am worth something beyond what I can provide for someone else. Brady felt relief and joy flood through him in equal measure. He stood and pulled Abigail to her feet, then wrapped his arms around her in a careful embrace. She pressed her face against his chest, and he felt her tears soaking through his shirt. We will do this properly, he promised. I will talk to Reverend Matthews tomorrow. He can perform the ceremony quietly with just a couple of witnesses. Then we will file the marriage certificate with the county clerk. Once that is done, you will legally be Mrs. Abigail Ashford, and Samuel Hackett will have no claim on you. Mrs. Abigail Ashford, she repeated softly. I like how that sounds. The next morning, Brady rode into town before dawn, arriving at the Reverend's small house just as the elderly minister was sitting down to breakfast. Reverend Matthews was a kind man in his 60s who had served the Westcliff community for nearly 20 years. He listened to Brady's carefully edited story about meeting a woman fleeing an unwanted marriage and falling in love with her, and agreed to perform a quiet ceremony that afternoon. Young man, the Reverend said seriously, marriage is a sacred commitment before God and man. Are you certain this is what you want? You have always been such a solitary fellow. I am certain, Brady said firmly, more certain than I have been about anything in a long time. And the young lady? She is willing, she is. And Reverend, there may be a man looking for her, a wealthy man from Denver who claims she is his fiancée. But I need you to understand that she never consented to that engagement. She was being forced into it, and she ran away to escape. I am offering her my protection and my name freely, with no coercion. Reverend Matthews studied Brady for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I see. And you are prepared to stand against this man if he comes looking for her, with every breath in my body. Then I will perform the ceremony this afternoon. Bring your bride to the church at 3 o'clock. I will ask Mrs. Henderson from the general store and her husband to stand as witnesses. They are discreet people. Brady rode home feeling lighter than he had in days. When he told Abigail that everything was arranged, she looked both excited and terrified. I do not have anything suitable to wear, she said, looking down at the simple dress she had borrowed from Brady's limited supplies. He had bought it in town the week before, a plain cotton dress that fit her reasonably well but was far from fancy. You look beautiful just as you are, Brady said honestly. But if you want, we can stop by the general store before the ceremony. Maybe Mrs. Henderson has something nicer. They rode into town together that afternoon, Abigail sitting behind Brady on his horse with her arms wrapped around his waist. Brady felt acutely aware of her presence, the warmth of her body against his back, the trust implicit in the way she held onto him. At the general store, Mrs. Henderson, a plump woman with kind eyes, immediately understood what they needed when Brady quietly explained they were getting married that afternoon. She disappeared into the back room and emerged with a dress of soft blue wool, simple but well made, with a modest neckline and fitted waist. "This came in last month, and I have not been able to sell it," Mrs. Henderson said, holding it up against Abigail. "I think it will fit you nicely, dear, and please accept it as a wedding gift." "I cannot," Abigail protested, but Mrs. Henderson waved her objections away. "Nonsense. Every bride deserves a proper dress. You go change in the back room, and I will see if I have some ribbon for your hair." 20 minutes later, Abigail emerged transformed. The blue dress fit her perfectly, bringing out the green of her eyes and the dark richness of her hair, which Mrs. Henderson had helped her arrange with white ribbon woven through the waves. Brady felt his breath catch in his throat. "You look stunning," he managed. Abigail blushed, a shy smile playing at her lips. "You are sure about this? There is still time to change your mind." Brady stepped forward and took both her hands in his. "I have never been more sure of anything. Come on, Reverend Matthews is waiting." The ceremony was simple but moving. Reverend Matthews spoke about love and commitment, about the sacred bond of marriage and the importance of cherishing and protecting one another. When it came time for Brady to say his vows, he spoke clearly and firmly, his eyes never leaving Abigail's face. "I, Brady James Ashford, take you, Abigail Marie Lawrence, to be my lawful wedded wife. I promise to protect you, to care for you, to honor you for all the days of my life. I give you my name, my home, and my heart, freely and without reservation." Abigail's voice shook slightly with emotion as she repeated her own vows. "I, Abigail Marie Lawrence, take you, Brady James Ashford, to be my lawful wedded husband. I promise to stand beside you, to support you, to honor you for all the days of my life. I accept your name, your home, and your heart, and I give you mine in return." Reverend Matthews pronounced them husband and wife, and when he told Brady he could kiss his bride, Brady leaned forward slowly, giving Abigail every chance to pull away. Instead, she rose on her toes and met him halfway, her lips soft and sweet against his. The kiss was brief and chaste, but it sealed their commitment more firmly than any words could have. After signing the marriage certificate with the Hendersons as witnesses, Brady and Abigail rode back to the ranch as the sun began to set. Neither of them spoke much, both lost in their own thoughts about what they had just done. It was only when they reached the house that the awkwardness of the situation hit them both. They were married now, legally bound together. But their marriage had been born of necessity and protection, not romance. What did that mean for tonight, for the future? Brady cleared his throat as they stood in the main room of the small house. "I will sleep in the barn tonight. You can have the house and the bed." "Brady, no, this is your home. I cannot kick you out of your own bed." "You are not kicking me out. I am choosing to give you privacy and space. This marriage is for your protection, remember. That does not mean I expect anything from you." Abigail stepped closer, her green eyes searching his face. "But what if I want to be a real wife to you? Not right now, perhaps, but eventually. Would you want that?" Brady felt his heart begin to pound. "Abigail, I would want nothing more, but I do not want you to feel obligated. You have been through so much already. I will not add to that burden by demanding things you are not ready to give. You are a good man, Brady Ashford." Abigail reached up and touched his cheek gently. "Better than I deserve." "That is not true. You deserve everything good in this world." Brady covered her hand with his own. "We have all the time we need to figure this out. There is no rush." That night, Brady did sleep in the barn, making himself a rough bed in the hay. But he lay awake for hours, thinking about Abigail in his house, wearing his ring, carrying his name. He had thought he wanted a solitary life, but now he could not imagine going back to that emptiness. Whatever happened next, whatever they built together, he knew his life had changed irrevocably the moment he opened that barn door and found her there. 3 days after the wedding, Samuel Hackett arrived at Brady's ranch. Brady was mending a section of fence when he saw the black carriage approaching, expensive and out of place on the rough frontier road. He set down his tools and walked slowly back toward the house, his hand resting on the pistol at his hip. Abigail was inside making bread, and he wanted to keep her there, out of sight, for as long as possible. The carriage stopped, and a man climbed out. Samuel Hackett was in his early 40s, tall and well-dressed in a suit that probably cost more than Brady made in 6 months. He had the kind of face that might have been handsome if not for the cruel set of his mouth and the cold calculation in his eyes. "Are you Brady Ashford?" Hackett demanded without preamble. "I am. What can I do for you? You can tell me if you have seen this woman." Hackett pulled a photograph from his jacket and held it out. Brady took it, though he already knew who it would show. Abigail stared back at him from the image, younger and more carefree, dressed in fine clothes with her hair elaborately styled. "She is my fiancée," Hackett continued. "She ran away from Denver 3 weeks ago, and I have been searching for her ever since. I have reason to believe she may have come through this area." Brady handed the photograph back, his face impassive. "Pretty woman, but I have not seen her. Sorry, I cannot help you." Hackett's eyes narrowed. "Are you certain? Because I am prepared to offer a substantial reward for information about her whereabouts. $100 to anyone who can tell me where she is." $100 is a lot of money, Brady acknowledged, "but I still have not seen her." "Perhaps I should search your property just to be certain." "You do not have the authority to do that." Brady's hand tightened on his pistol. "This is private land, and unless you have a warrant from a lawful authority, you need to leave. You know who I am." Hackett took a step closer, his voice dropping to a threatening rumble. "I am Samuel Hackett. I own half of Denver. I have judges and politicians in my pocket. If I want to search your property, I will do it, and there is nothing you can do to stop me." "Maybe in Denver that is true," Brady said calmly. "But out here, money does not buy you the right to trespass on another man's land. So I am going to ask you politely one more time to leave. After that, I will not be so polite." The standoff was interrupted by the sound of the front door opening. Both men turned to see Abigail step out onto the porch, her chin lifted defiantly. She wore her wedding ring prominently on her left hand, and the sunlight caught the gold band, making it gleam. "Hello, Samuel," she said, her voice steady despite the fear Brady could see in her eyes. "I am afraid you have wasted your time coming all this way. I am not going back to Denver with you." Hackett's face flushed dark red. "Abigail, thank God I found you. Your father has been beside himself with worry. Come here at once. We are leaving." "No, we are not." Abigail walked down the steps and crossed to stand beside Brady. She reached for his hand and he took it immediately, squeezing gently in support. "I am not your fiancé anymore, Samuel. I am married. This is my husband, Brady Ashford." For a moment, Hackett looked genuinely shocked. Then his expression twisted into rage. "Married? That is impossible. You have been gone less than a month. This is clearly a sham, probably coerced. When I tell the authorities, they will have it annulled immediately." "It is not a sham," Brady said firmly. "We were married 3 days ago by Reverend Matthews in Westcliff, with proper witnesses and a legal certificate filed with the county clerk. Abigail is my wife by law, and you have no claim on her. She was promised to me. Her father signed a contract." "My father had no right to promise me to anyone," Abigail said, her voice growing stronger. "I am not property to be sold to pay off gambling debts. I am a person, and I have the right to choose my own husband. I choose Brady." Hackett's hand moved toward his jacket, and Brady immediately drew his pistol, cocking it with a sharp click that echoed across the yard. "I would not do that if I were you," Brady said quietly. "Whatever you are reaching for, leave it where it is." Hackett froze, his face mottled with rage and humiliation. "You are making a terrible mistake, both of you. I will not let this stand. I have lawyers' resources. I will have this marriage annulled, and Abigail, you will come back to Denver where you belong." "The only mistake I made was not running sooner," Abigail said. "I know what you did to Elizabeth. I know how she suffered, how you broke her spirit until there was nothing left. I would rather die than let you do the same to me. Elizabeth was weak. You would have been different." "No, Elizabeth was strong. She survived 2 years with you before her body finally gave out. That takes more strength than you will ever have." Abigail squeezed Brady's hand. "Now please leave our property. You are not welcome here." Hackett stared at them for a long moment, his expression venomous. Then he turned and stalked back to his carriage. Before climbing in, he called back, "This is not over. I will be back with the law if necessary, and when I am done, you will both regret crossing me." The carriage pulled away, leaving Brady and Abigail standing in the yard. As soon as it was out of sight, Abigail's knees buckled and Brady caught her, holding her close as she shook with reaction. "You were so brave," he murmured against her hair. "I am proud of you. I was terrified." Seeing him again, hearing his voice, it brought everything back. She pulled away slightly to look up at Brady. "Do you think he meant it? About coming back with the law, he might try. But we have a legitimate marriage, properly witnessed and recorded. No judge is going to annul that just because some rich man from Denver wants them to." Brady stroked her hair gently. "You are safe, Abigail. I promise you. I will not let him take you." That night they sat together on the porch long after dark, talking about what might come next. Brady held Abigail against his side, his arm around her shoulders, and she leaned into him with a trust that made his heart ache. "I never thanked you properly," Abigail said softly, "for everything you have given me. Your home, your name, your protection. You barely knew me, and you risked everything to keep me safe. You do not need to thank me. It was the right thing to do, maybe, but not many men would have done it." She turned her head to look at him, her face close to his in the darkness. "I meant what I said when I married you, Brady. I gave you my heart. I know this started as a marriage of convenience, but for me, it has become something more. I love you." Brady felt emotion swell in his chest, so powerful it almost hurt. "I love you too. I think I started falling for you the moment I found you in my barn, fierce and frightened and determined to survive. And every day since then, I have fallen a little more." Abigail reached up and touched his face, tracing his jawline with gentle fingers. "Then can this be a real marriage?" "In every way. Are you sure?" Brady searched her eyes, looking for any hint of doubt or obligation. "I do not want you to feel pressured." "I am sure. I want to be your wife truly. I want us to build a life together, a real life. I want to wake up beside you every morning and fall asleep in your arms every night. I want everything that marriage can be." Brady answered by kissing her, slow and deep, pouring everything he felt into that kiss. Abigail responded with equal passion, her arms wrapping around his neck as she pressed closer to him. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Brady stood and lifted her into his arms. "Then let me carry my bride over the threshold properly," he said, and Abigail laughed, the sound like music in the night air. Inside, Brady laid her gently on the bed and then lit the oil lamp, keeping the flame low so the light was soft and warm. They undressed each other slowly, shyly, discovering each other with gentle hands and whispered words of love. When they finally came together, it was with tenderness and care. each of them putting the other's pleasure and comfort first. Afterward, they lay tangled together, Abigail's head on Brady's chest, his arms wrapped securely around her. Brady felt a contentment he had never known before, a sense of completeness that made everything else in his life seem pale by comparison. "I never thought I could have this," Abigail whispered. "Happiness, love, safety. Thank you for giving it to me." "Thank you for bringing light into my lonely life," Brady replied, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "I did not know I was living in darkness until you showed me what sunshine felt like." They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other's arms, and for the first time since finding Abigail in his barn, Brady slept peacefully, without worry or fear. The next several weeks passed in a kind of blissful haze. Brady taught Abigail how to ride horses properly, and they spent long afternoons exploring the property together, her laughter ringing out across the hills. She learned to help with the cattle and proved surprisingly adept at it, unafraid of the large animals and quick to understand their behavior. In the evenings, they cooked together, talked about their dreams for the future, and made love with increasing confidence and passion. Brady had never been happier, and from the glow in Abigail's eyes, he knew she felt the same. They made a trip into Westcliff together, and Brady introduced Abigail as his wife to everyone they met. The townspeople were curious but welcoming, and several of the women invited Abigail to join the church social circle. Mrs. Henderson pulled Brady aside while Abigail was looking at fabric. "That is a good woman you have there," she said quietly. "I can see she has been through hard times, but she has a strong spirit. You did right by her, Brady." "I hope so. I am trying." "Well, keep trying, and if that fancy man from Denver comes back around, you let us know. The folks in Westcliff look after our own, and your wife is one of us now." Brady felt warmth spread through his chest. He had always been on the periphery of the town community, accepted but not quite part of it. But now, through Abigail, he found himself being drawn in, becoming part of something larger than himself. 2 months after the confrontation with Hackett, Brady came home from town with the mail to find Abigail in the barn, grooming his horse with practice strokes. She looked up when he entered, her face lighting up with the smile that never failed to make his heart skip a beat. "How was town?" she asked. "Fine. George had a letter for you at the store. It came from Denver." Brady held out the envelope, and he saw Abigail's smile fade as she recognized the handwriting on the front. "It is from my father," she said quietly, taking the letter with obvious reluctance. She turned it over in her hands for a moment, then opened it carefully. Brady watched her face as she read, seeing hurt and anger and sadness chase across her features. When she finished, she let the letter fall to the barn floor. "He says he disowns me, that I am no longer his daughter. That by running away and marrying you, I have dishonored him and destroyed his life. He says Samuel withdrew his offer to clear the debts when I refused to come back, and now he is facing debtor's prison." Brady wanted to say he was sorry, but the words felt inadequate. Instead, he crossed to Abigail and pulled her into his arms. She pressed her face against his chest and cried quietly, her shoulders shaking with the force of her grief. "I knew he cared more about his debts than about me," she said, when she could speak again. "But reading it, seeing the words written out, it still hurts. He was my father. He was supposed to protect me, not sell me to a monster." "I know, sweetheart. I know it hurts." Brady stroked her hair gently. "But you did nothing wrong. You chose life and freedom over being sacrificed for someone else's mistakes. That took courage, not dishonor. Do you think he will really go to prison? I do not know. Maybe Samuel will find another way to hurt him, or maybe your father will find a way out of his debts. But whatever happens, it is not your responsibility. You cannot set yourself on fire to keep him warm." Abigail nodded against his chest. I know, but it still hurts. Of course it does. He is your father. Love does not just disappear because the person does not deserve it. Brady tilted her chin up so he could look into her eyes. But you have a new family now. Me. And whatever children we might have in the future. We will build something better together, something founded on love and respect instead of obligation and debt. Children. Abigail's eyes widened slightly. We have not talked about that. Do you not want them? I do. I think I do, I just did not know if you did. Brady smiled and kissed her forehead. I want everything with you, Abigail. Children, a bigger house, more land, growing old together, all of it, as much as life will give us. Then that is what we will have, Abigail said, reaching up to kiss him properly. And we will do it better than our parents did. We will love our children and protect them and never make them feel like they are less important than money or pride or anything else. That is a promise I can make, Brady agreed. As fall turned toward winter, Brady worked on expanding the house, adding a second room that could eventually serve as a nursery. Abigail helped when she could, but she spent most of her time preparing for the coming cold months, preserving food and sewing warmer clothes. They worked side by side in comfortable companionship, and Brady marveled at how naturally they had fallen into being a team. One morning in late November, Abigail woke feeling ill. At first, Brady worried she had caught something serious, but when the nausea persisted for several days and was accompanied by exhaustion and tender breasts, they both began to suspect the truth. Mrs. Henderson confirmed it when Abigail went to her for advice. The older woman had birthed 5 children of her own and recognized the signs immediately. Abigail came home from town with her eyes shining, practically floating with excitement. We are having a baby, she announced as soon as Brady came in from the barn. Mrs. Henderson says I am probably about 8 weeks along. The baby should come in late June or early July. Brady swept her up in his arms and spun her around, both of them laughing with pure joy. When he set her down, he immediately dropped to his knees and pressed his ear against her still flat belly. Hello in there, little one, he said softly. I am your papa. I cannot wait to meet you. We are going to love you so much, your mama and I, more than anything in this world. Abigail ran her fingers through his hair, her eyes wet with happy tears. We are going to be a family, a real family. We already are, Brady said, standing and pulling her close. But yes, our family is growing, and that is the best news I could ever receive. That winter was hard, with heavy snows that sometimes left them snowed in for days at a time. But inside their small house, Brady and Abigail were warm and content. They spent the long evenings planning for the baby, arguing good-naturedly over names and making tiny clothes from scraps of fabric. Brady built a cradle from pine wood, carving it with care and sanding it until it was smooth as silk. Abigail's belly grew steadily, and Brady was fascinated by the changes in her body, the way the baby moved and kicked, making her laugh and wince in equal measure. He would spend hours with his hand on her belly, feeling their child move beneath his palm, and every time it filled him with wonder. Spring came late that year, but when it finally arrived, it brought warm sunshine and the promise of new beginnings. Abigail was large and uncomfortable by then, ready for the pregnancy to be over. She waddled more than walked, and she complained constantly about her swollen feet and aching back. But she was also glowing with health and happiness, and Brady thought she had never been more beautiful. On a warm evening in early July, Abigail's labor began. Brady rode into town to fetch Mrs. Henderson, who came immediately with her supplies and her calm, capable presence. The labor was long and difficult, lasting through the night and into the next day. Brady stayed by Abigail's side the whole time, holding her hand, wiping her brow and encouraging her through each contraction. Finally, just as the sun was setting on the second day, their baby was born. The tiny infant's cry filled the house, strong and healthy, and Mrs. Henderson wrapped the baby in a soft blanket before placing it in Abigail's arms. "You have a son," she announced with a smile. "A big, healthy boy." Brady looked down at his wife and child, tears streaming unashamedly down his face. The baby had a shock of dark hair and was already quieting in his mother's arms, his tiny hand curling around Abigail's finger. "He is perfect," Abigail whispered, exhausted but radiant. "Look at him, Brady. We made this perfect little person. He is amazing. You are amazing." Brady leaned down to kiss her forehead, then gently touched his son's soft cheek. What should we name him? They had debated names for months, never quite settling on one they both loved. But now, looking at their son, Abigail smiled. "What about Benjamin?" "Benjamin James Ashford, after your middle name." "Benjamin," Brady repeated, testing the name. "Yes, that is perfect. Hello, Benjamin. Welcome to the world, son." The next few weeks were exhausting but wonderful. Benjamin was a good baby, healthy and strong, and he quickly established a routine of eating and sleeping that allowed his parents to get some rest. Brady was entranced by fatherhood, spending hours just watching his son sleep or holding him and talking to him in a low, soothing voice. Abigail recovered well from the birth, and by August she was back to helping with the ranch work, though she now did it with Benjamin strapped to her chest in a sling. The sight of his wife working with their son nestled against her never failed to make Brady's heart swell with love. One afternoon, as they were sitting on the porch watching Benjamin play with his toes, Abigail said thoughtfully, "Do you ever think about that day you found me in the barn? How different our lives would be if you had just sent me away." Brady pulled her closer against his side. "I think about it sometimes. How lonely I was before you came, how empty my life felt, even though I did not realize it at the time. I was so scared that day, so desperate. I thought my life was over, that I had no future beyond running and hiding." Abigail looked down at Benjamin, who was now trying to grab his own feet. "And then you gave me everything. A home, a name, a family, love. You saved my life in every way that matters." "You saved mine too," Brady said honestly. "I was just existing before you, not really living. You taught me how to open my heart again, how to love and be loved. You made me whole." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching Benjamin and the sunset painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Finally, Abigail said, "I want to give him siblings. I want our house to be full of children and laughter. I want to build the family neither of us had growing up." "Then that is what we will do," Brady promised. "As many children as you want, as big a family as we can love and provide for. I will build us a bigger house, buy more land. Whatever it takes to give you and our children everything you deserve. I do not need a bigger house or more land. I just need you and our family." Abigail turned her head to kiss him softly. "That is all I have ever needed." 2 years later, Abigail gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Emily Rose. She had her mother's green eyes and her father's dark hair, and she was spirited from the day she was born. Benjamin adored his little sister, and Brady often found him trying to share his toys with her or singing her the lullabies Abigail had taught him. The house had indeed grown bigger, with 2 new rooms added to accommodate their expanding family. Brady's cattle herd had grown too, and they were prospering in a modest but comfortable way. Abigail had started a garden that provided vegetables through the summer and fall, and she had become friends with several women in town, creating a support network that enriched both their lives. Samuel Hackett never returned after that first confrontation. They heard through the Westcliff gossip chain that he had eventually married another young woman from a desperate family, though the marriage only lasted a year before she too died under mysterious circumstances. The scandal finally caught up with him, and he left Denver in disgrace, relocating to San Francisco where his reputation was less well known. Abigail's father died in debtor's prison 3 years after disowning his daughter. When the news reached them, Abigail grieved quietly for the man he had been before gambling consumed him, but she felt no guilt for the choices she had made. She had built a new life, a better life, and she refused to let the past cast shadows over her present happiness. By the time Benjamin was 5 and Emily was 3, Abigail was pregnant again. This pregnancy was harder than the first two, and she spent much of it on bed rest. Brady took over most of the household duties, with help from the older children, and he worried constantly about his wife. But Abigail remained positive, confident that everything would be fine. In October of 1882, she gave birth to twin boys, Thomas and William. They were small but healthy, and they quickly made their presence known with lusty cries that echoed through the house. Brady was overwhelmed by the reality of 5 children under 6 years old, but he was also deeply grateful for the chaos and joy they brought. The years passed in a blur of children growing, cattle thriving, and love deepening. Brady added more rooms to the house until it was no longer a small ranch house but a proper home, large enough to hold their family comfortably. He bought more land and hired a young man from town to help with the cattle, giving him more time to spend with Abigail and the children. Benjamin grew into a serious, responsible boy who loved working with his father and the cattle. Emily was bright and fearless, always getting into scrapes and adventures that gave her parents gray hairs. Thomas was quiet and thoughtful, happiest with a book in his hands, while William was the comedian of the family, always making everyone laugh with his antics. When Benjamin was 10, he asked his parents how they had met. Brady and Abigail exchanged glances, silently deciding how much to tell him. "Your mother was in trouble," Brady said carefully. "She needed help and I was able to give it to her. We fell in love and got married." "What kind of trouble?" Benjamin pressed, curious. Abigail smiled and ruffled her son's hair. "The kind that does not matter anymore because it all worked out in the end. The important thing is that sometimes people come into our lives when we need them most, and if we are brave enough to accept their help and open enough to love them, wonderful things can happen. Like you and Papa." "Exactly like me and your Papa." Benjamin seemed satisfied with that answer, and the conversation moved on to other topics. But later that night, as Brady and Abigail lay in bed, she said softly, "Do you think we will ever tell them the whole truth about Samuel and my father and how I ran away?" "Maybe when they are older," Brady replied, pulling her close, "when they can understand the complexities of it all. For now, they just need to know that we love them and each other and that our family is built on solid ground." "It is solid, is it not?" Abigail mused. "After all these years, after everything we have been through, we are still strong." "Stronger than ever," Brady confirmed. "You know, sometimes I still think about that morning when I found you in my barn. How terrified you were, how desperate, and how terrified I was too in a different way. I was so afraid of getting hurt again, of letting anyone into my carefully controlled life. But you did let me in. I could not help myself. You were like a force of nature, sweeping away all my carefully constructed walls." Brady kissed her temple gently. "Best decision I ever made, letting those walls fall." "Second best," Abigail corrected with a smile. "The best decision was marrying me. That goes without saying." They fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms just as they had every night for over a decade. And though their lives had changed dramatically since that day in the barn, The love between them had only grown stronger and deeper with time. The children continued to grow. Benjamin became a skilled rancher, taking over more and more of the day-to-day operations as he entered his teenage years. Emily surprised everyone by developing a talent for healing and began studying with the doctor in Westcliff, learning medicine with an aptitude that suggested she might become a real physician someday. The twins, now in their early teens, were inseparable and had started their own small business breeding and training horses, showing an entrepreneurial spirit that made their parents proud. When Benjamin turned 18, he announced that he wanted to expand the ranch further, buying the adjacent property that had recently become available. Brady was hesitant at first, worried about taking on the additional debt, but Abigail encouraged him to trust their son's judgment. "He has a good head for business," she pointed out, "and he has learned everything from watching you. Let him try. Even if he fails, the lesson will be valuable." Brady agreed, and Benjamin proved his mother right. Within 2 years, the expanded ranch was thriving, producing enough income to support the growing family comfortably and even put money aside for the future. Brady found himself able to step back from the day-to-day work, spending more time with Abigail and enjoying the fruits of everything they had built together. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Brady surprised Abigail with a trip to Denver. It was her first time back since she had fled all those years ago, and she was nervous about returning. But Brady wanted to show her that she had nothing to fear anymore, that she was a respected wife and mother with a loving family, not a frightened girl running from an unwanted marriage. They stayed in a nice hotel and spent several days seeing the sights of the city, which had grown dramatically since Abigail had left. On their last evening, as they walked through the downtown area, Abigail suddenly stopped in front of a large stone building. "This is where my father's office was," she said quietly, "where he used to work before the gambling took over his life." Brady took her hand. "Do you want to try to find out what happened to it, to his business?" Abigail thought for a moment, then shook her head. "No. That part of my life is over. I have everything I need now. A husband I love, children who make me proud, a home that is truly mine. The past cannot hurt me anymore." "I am glad," Brady said, pulling her close, "because I need you to know how much these 20 years have meant to me. You transformed my life in ways I could never have imagined. Every day with you has been a gift. Even the hard days, the days when the children were sick, or the cattle were dying, or money was tight. Especially those days," Brady said seriously. "Because even in the hardest moments we had each other. We faced everything together, and that made all the difference." Abigail reached up and kissed him, not caring that they were standing on a public street. "Here is to 20 more years," she whispered. "And 20 after that, if God grants us the time. I will take every moment I can get with you," Brady promised. Forever would not be long enough. They returned to Westcliff to find that Emily had been accepted into a prestigious medical program in Boston. It was a bittersweet moment, pride mixing with sadness at the thought of their daughter leaving home. But both Brady and Abigail encouraged her to go, to pursue her dreams and make something of herself beyond the confines of their small Colorado town. "The world is bigger than Westcliff," Abigail told Emily as they packed her trunk, "and you have the talent and intelligence to make a real difference. Do not let fear hold you back from that." "But what if I fail? What if I am not good enough?" "Then you will learn from it and try again," Abigail said firmly. "Your father and I did not build this life by playing it safe. We took risks, made mistakes, and kept going. You can do the same." Emily hugged her mother tightly. "Thank you for always believing in me. For teaching me that I could be more than just someone's wife. Not that there is anything wrong with being someone's wife," Abigail said with a smile. "Being your father's wife has been one of the great joys of my life. But it is not the only thing I am, and it does not have to be the only thing you are either. You can be a doctor and a wife and a mother, or you can just be a doctor. The choice is yours, and whatever you choose, your father and I will support you." Emily left for Boston in the fall, and the house felt emptier without her vibrant presence. But letters came regularly, full of excitement about her studies and the fascinating people she was meeting. Brady and Abigail read them aloud at dinner, sharing Emily's adventures with the rest of the family. As the years passed, the children began leaving home one by one, building their own lives and families. Benjamin married a sweet young woman from Westcliff and took over full management of the ranch, building a house on the far end of the property for his new family. Thomas went to college and became a teacher, eventually settling in Denver where he taught literature and poetry. William stayed in Westcliff, expanding his horse breeding business into a thriving operation that supplied animals to ranches throughout Colorado. Emily became a doctor, one of the first female physicians in Boston, and she made her parents proud with her dedication to treating the poor and underserved. She eventually returned to Colorado, opening a practice in Westcliff that served the entire region. She never married, content with her work and her family, though she had several close friendships that enriched her life. By the time Brady and Abigail were in their 60s, they were surrounded by grandchildren, a whole new generation carrying forward the legacy they had built. Their house was often full of noise and laughter as children and grandchildren came to visit, and Brady and Abigail delighted in spoiling the little ones and sharing stories of the old days. One evening, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset, much as they had done thousands of times before, Abigail said thoughtfully, "Do you remember what you said to me that first day, when I asked why you were helping me?" "I said it was the right thing to do," Brady replied, "and that everyone deserves a chance to be free. You gave me so much more than freedom, though. You gave me a life worth living. You gave me love and family and purpose. You gave me everything." Brady took her hand, noting how soft and weathered it had become over the years, marked by decades of work and life. "You gave me just as much, more even. You took a lonely, broken man and taught him how to live again, how to love again. I was just existing before you came along. You made me whole." "We made each other whole," Abigail corrected gently. "That is what love does, I think. It fills in the empty spaces and makes us better than we were alone." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. Brady thought about all the years they had shared, the struggles and triumphs, the sorrows and joys. He thought about the frightened woman he had found in his barn all those years ago, and the strong, confident woman sitting beside him now. And he thought about how one moment, one decision to help a stranger had changed everything. "I would do it all again," he said suddenly. "Every moment, every challenge, every hard day, I would do it all again in a heartbeat just to end up here with you." Abigail squeezed his hand, tears glistening in her eyes. "So would I. Even the scary parts, the painful parts, because they all led me to you, to this life, to our family, and I would not trade that for anything." As darkness fell, they remained on the porch, holding hands and sharing the silence that only two people who have loved each other for decades can truly appreciate. Inside the house, they could hear their grandchildren playing, their laughter floating out through the open windows. The ranch stretched out before them, prosperous and well-maintained, a testament to everything they had built together. Brady and Abigail grew old together, their love never fading even as their bodies weakened with age. They celebrated their 40th anniversary surrounded by children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren, the house bursting with family and love. It was exactly the life they had dreamed of all those years ago, sitting on this same porch and planning their future. When Brady was 72, he took ill with pneumonia during a particularly harsh winter. Abigail nursed him with the same fierce determination she had shown when running away from Samuel Hackett all those years ago. Emily came to help, using all her medical knowledge to fight for her father's life. And slowly, stubbornly, Brady recovered, though the illness left him weaker than before. "You cannot leave me yet," Abigail scolded gently as he convalesced. "We still have too much living to do." "I am not going anywhere," Brady promised, though his voice was weak. "I told you once that forever would not be long enough with you. I meant it. I intend to stick around as long as possible." He kept that promise for another 8 years. During that time, he and Abigail enjoyed a slower pace of life, spending their days in the garden Abigail still tended with loving care, playing with great-grandchildren, and simply being together. They told stories about the old days, laughed about their mistakes, and marveled at how blessed their lives had been. Brady passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 80, with Abigail lying beside him just as she had every night for more than 50 years. She woke to find him gone, and though her heart broke with grief, she also felt a deep gratitude for the incredible life they had shared. The funeral was attended by what seemed like half of Colorado. Benjamin and his grown children, Thomas and his family, William with his wife and children, Emily who held her mother's hand throughout the service, and grandchildren and great-grandchildren filling the church to capacity. They all spoke of Brady's kindness, his quiet strength, his dedication to family, and the love he had shown everyone who knew him. After the funeral, as family gathered at the ranch house, Emily found her mother standing alone on the porch, looking out over the land Brady had built into something remarkable. "Are you all right, Mama?" Emily asked softly. Abigail smiled through her tears. "I am sad, of course. But I am also grateful. Your father gave me 52 years of love and happiness. Not everyone gets that. Not everyone finds the kind of love we had." "How did you know?" Emily asked. "That first day when he found you in the barn, how did you know you could trust him?" "I did not completely. But I was desperate and he was kind. And then, as I got to know him, I realized that his kindness was not a facade or a manipulation. It was just who he was, down to his core. He was a good man, Emily. The best man I ever knew. He loved you so much. And I loved him. I still do. I always will." Abigail put her arm around her daughter. "That is the thing about real love. It does not end just because someone dies. It continues on in the children we raised, the life we built, the memories we made. Your father will always be with me in here." She touched her heart. "And in everything around us. This ranch, this family, it is all a testament to our love." Abigail lived for another 6 years after Brady's passing, surrounded by family and love until the very end. She spent her final years telling stories to her great-grandchildren, passing on the history of how their family began. She told them about the brave cowboy who found a frightened woman in his barn and gave her everything. She told them about trust and love and courage, about building something from nothing, about family and legacy and the things that truly matter in life. When she finally passed away peacefully at the age of 84, she was laid to rest beside Brady on the hill overlooking the ranch they had built together. The headstone was simple but meaningful, bearing both their names and a single inscription that summed up their remarkable love story. Two souls who found each other and built a life worth living. The ranch stayed in the family, passed down through Benjamin's children and their children after them. The house that Brady had expanded room by room to hold his growing family still stood, now a sprawling homestead that had seen 5 generations of Ashfords. The barn where Abigail had first taken shelter was carefully maintained, preserved as a reminder of where it all began. And every year, on the anniversary of Brady and Abigail's wedding, the family gathered at the ranch to celebrate and remember. They told the story again and again, keeping it alive for new generations. The story of the lonely cowboy who found a woman sheltering in his barn, who gave her his house and his name, and who discovered that in saving her, he had actually saved himself. The story of how one act of kindness and courage had blossomed into a love that lasted a lifetime and beyond, creating a legacy of family and love that would endure for generations to come. It was a story of fear transformed into courage, of loneliness transformed into love, of 2 broken people who found each other and became whole. It was a story that proved that sometimes the best things in life come from the moments when we choose to help someone in need, when we open our hearts despite our fears, and when we believe that love is worth the risk. And it was a story that reminded everyone who heard it that real love, the kind that lasts, is built not on grand gestures or passionate beginnings, but on the quiet, steady choice to stand beside someone through all the challenges and joys that life brings. Brady and Abigail had chosen each other that day in the barn, and they had kept choosing each other every day after, building a love that transformed both their lives and created something beautiful that lasted long after they were gone. That was the true legacy they left behind. Not land or cattle or a big house, but love, and it was a legacy that would never fade.